Once he was freshly showered and the filthy uniform was sent to the laundry room, Karl headed down to the designated meeting spot, where he found only Dana waiting.
It looks like the other two canceled on us. Their combat teacher met them on the way down, and he took them for some additional training after he heard that they were getting so good with guard skills.
She explained. Well, then there will be more room for us to study. What do you have to work on today? Karl asked.
Mana theory. It's one of the big ones for the mage class, both to grow our own mana pool and to reduce the casting cost of the spells that we know. At first, we're really inefficient, but it gets better all the time. The idea is that as we get better, most mages will get some insight into new spells or skills. It's just part of the mage class. Then, we can use that to expand our spell book without having to learn the spells in class, which is way faster. And the ones you get from insight tend to grow faster and more powerful, which will help rank up.
She explained. That actually sounds like a lot of work. Mostly, I just need to practice my fighting skills and my physical abilities so that I can keep up with my growth. At least, that is it for now. They don't know anything about the class marking that I got, so unless I get an insight like the mages do, I will only have the one skill. But it grows more powerful as Hawk does. My body does as well. The stronger he grows, the stronger I grow. Karl replied with a smile.
Well, that's both a tough break and a huge win. You get stronger just by existing and training your pet. No intense study needed. But only having one skill would be a bit limiting eventually.
They walked in silence for a few seconds. Then Dana pointed to a pathway that led into a garden.
That's where we're going. There are a bunch of gazebos with tables there, and we can do our study. Once I get a few more credits, I am totally getting one of the Academy laptops or a tablet. It will be so much easier than handwriting these notes all the time. I don't think that I've used a pen that much since I was in elementary school. But the mages and the teaching staff are all ancient, and they think that huge books are the way to go. Just book after book of handwritten knowledge.
Karl laughed. The majority of electronic devices had only come about in the last 20 or 30 years, so anyone who was over 60 tended to favor pen and paper, and some of the mages from the old tradition before the divine injection were hundreds of years old. They were not going to change their ways anytime soon, even if printing pages made for much more legible tomes and diagrams that everyone could clearly read. Dana led them to a small gazebo tucked into an alcove in the hedge maze, and when they sat down, the enchanted bushes grew around the small building, blocking them from passing students and giving them privacy to study. This is wonderful, and it smells so good. Karl sighed, thinking of both the coal dust at home and the filth of the swamp.
Yeah, lilacs are my favorite to begin with, so it's difficult to beat this place.
Dana agreed with a smile as she set out her textbooks across from him. Karl set out his current study guide on common monsters around the academy. This was the book that all the student groups who got to go out on expeditions were required to memorize, and Sergeant Rita had demanded that Karl learn it as well, even though she had no intention of letting him leave the academy grounds so soon. What she wanted him to learn was all the abilities of the monsters, so that he could formulate a plan for his own growth. Once he had that, Karl assumed she would make good on her promise to find him another monster cub to try to add to his collection, one that's more durable than Hawk. Studying monsters was fun, but between the smell of lilacs and whatever shampoo Dana had used, Karl was finding it difficult to focus. Hawk didn't care at all, as he found his nest more comfortable than the lilac bushes were likely to be. But Dana smelled wonderful, and her presence in this private gazebo had Karl more flustered than he would care to admit. But he did his best not to be a creep and work on his studies, carefully making notes about each of the monsters in the area that might be somewhat worthwhile, while memorizing the others in case he ran into them in the future. The more that he knew, the more likely that the sergeant was to relent on her stance of keeping him here for training instead of letting him go outside. Not that the academy wasn't beautiful or well-equipped, but Karl had rarely been outside the mining town while he was growing up, and he had seen many kilometers of wilderness on their way here. Just getting to see it with a group would be an adventure, like the camping trip that his father promised on that mythical day off that he never got. The two studied silently for hours, until the sky started to change colors as sunset approached.
Well, that's our cue to go back inside. If we don't get going soon, it will be dark before we get to dinner, and they don't light any of the academy grounds except the paths between buildings.
Dana sighed, annoyed to have to stop her work. You seemed really into your studies, Karl noted.
Yeah, the other two are good combat partners, but lousy study partners. They don't take anything seriously, and they never stop talking. Just being able to sit and study is a pleasant change.
She agreed. As soon as they packed their things and stood, the bush around the gazebo opened again, allowing them access to the maze. But the moment that they stepped out, the world got incredibly dark, as if the sun had already set an hour ago, and the gazebo had been providing its own light.
Crap, I can't see anything,
Dana muttered.
I think it's just because we're behind the bushes and in a cloud shadow. Once we're back outside, it should be better. But I can see just fine, so if you take my hand, we should be able to make it out,
Karl suggested. Dana's hand bumped his arm, then slid down to clutch at his fingers, and Karl realized just how dark it probably was to anyone else. None of the colors that he could see were ones he had names for, but the light was coming from the grass under their feet. It must be a form of bioluminescence that was outside the normal human range of sight, which meant that the darkness here was likely unnatural. They hadn't mistaken the time. Someone had cast a darkness spell on the maze. Dana's hand was surprisingly soft and warm in his as Karl led the way back down the path, and her breathing was becoming more frantic as she nearly stumbled in the grass.
Don't worry, I've got you. Just relax and follow my steps,
Karl whispered. Dana moved to his side, so Karl wrapped his arm around her shoulders, not letting go of her hand as they made the last few corners to exit the maze. Their spot hadn't been far in, with little chance of getting lost in the maze itself, but the walk had still been quite the pleasant memory. Dana sighed with relief when they made it back into the fading evening light. But she didn't move to step away from Karl until they heard someone softly laughing nearby, behind one of the trees. Congratulations! You are the first ones out of the maze of romance, and such a cute young couple as well. The person behind the tree laughed.
Maze of romance?
Dana asked softly. Didn't you know? This is the Academy's most famous makeout spot, thanks to the hidden bushes. We cast a darkness spell over them whenever we get bored to see who comes out as a couple, who leaves their partner behind, and who thinks that darkness blocks sounds and takes things one step further, the senior classmate explained. Dana blushed, but Karl had a brilliant idea. He leaned over to whisper in her ear. If everyone believes that we're coming here to make out, nobody will bother our studies. We can be here all night and nobody will try to stop us. For a second, she actually fell for the trick. Then she looked up at Karl and her cheeks blushed a little darker as she realized what he was actually suggesting. The two of them, alone in the Academy's top spot for couples. It would be a scandal among the mage class students, and the boys of the warrior classes next to them would certainly whine about her and Karl being together, meaning that the other boys didn't have a chance. But she didn't want any of them, and Karl seemed content to let her actually study, at least most of the night. Dana pushed the thoughts of what they might do during the times they weren't studying and nodded her agreement with his plan.
Tomorrow is an off day. We can come back after breakfast to study.
She whispered back.
In that case, I will pack lunch.
The two of them turned to leave, just as the sound of two people arguing came from near the exit of the maze. Whatever couple was coming out next was not happy with each other, but neither Karl nor Dana was interested in other students' drama tonight. They didn't even notice that they were still holding hands until Dana turned toward her unit in the dormitory and was briefly pulled back by her grip.
Sorry, I forgot. I will see you in the morning,
she stammered, then ran down the hall to her room.
Wait, that's not the end. You've just had a free taste. Now get the full story on the Pocket FM app, link in description. Check out our next video and playlist, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.